What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be continuing the series where we take a look at some of the best Pokemon from each region that for whatever reason nobody else is using in the Go Battle League, and this time we're in the Hisui region, which doesn't really have many Pokemon to choose from at all. However, I had the choice of basically the entire region because nobody uses any of these Pokemon in the Open Great League these days. So in the lead I'm running Electrode, which has a very unique typing. It's honestly quite surprising that you don't see it that much. As the safe swap I've got Quillfish, which obviously if you want a spammy dark and poison type Pokemon with Aqua Tail for coverage, you're probably just going to choose Drapion, so that is kind of understandable why no one uses this Pokemon. However, it's still very good. And then finally, as the closer, I'm running Cleavor, which has received several buffs over recent seasons with both Fury Cutter and Rock Slide dealing more damage, and it also has great coverage in Trailblaze, which can also boost up its attack stat, which is already very high. With that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Aside from the Hisui region, which of course is very small, which region as a whole do you think has the least amount of viable GBL Pokemon? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so go into the first battle, leading Electrode into Credillious. Of course, not a great matchup for me, gonna be safe swapping into my Hisui and Quillfish, and I will still outpace him to that first charge, with presumably the opponent gonna stay in and look to debuff me with a Rock Tomb, and the opponent surprisingly does no shield that first Dark Pulse. But anyways, Rock Tomb, gonna debuff my attack stat. The opponent then gonna make a very nice catch there, catching a resisted debuffed Dark Pulse onto Shadow Primate, but we are still gonna deal decent damage there. We swap back into Electrode, and I'm gonna farm up to the Wild Charge and then bait with a Swift. Honestly, from this range, Swift probably gets the KO anyways, and the opponent gonna throw on CMP here. However, I actually don't mind using my shield, as I can either grab the final shield from the opponent or just take out the Shadow Primate. So Swift is going to get the KO there. The opponent likely to come back in with that Credillious, and they will do exactly that. At this point, I'm going to no-shield this. They have overfarmed just a little bit here, so we're going to wait out our switch clock and come in with the Cleavor. I'm going to look to go for a full Fury Cutter farm down, but the opponent going to get to a Rock Tomb, so I do swap out. I make that catch onto Quillfish. Rock Tomb gets the KO, and the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a shiny Shadow Charizard, and this game is absolutely over. Of course, we've got Rock Slide gonna hit for double super effective damage. We're already at back-to-back, so of course they can no longer shield. Rock Slide gets the one shot. We can Fury Cutter farm them down, so the opponent can seize the match at literally 1 HP, and I'm able to take that game. Into next battle, we can see a Shadow Scizor in the lead. Now, pretty much every Grass-type Pokemon is going to struggle into Shadow Scizor, but actually, Electrode has a fine matchup here. We can no-shield a Night Sash, gonna bait with a Swift. That means I can outpace them to the next charge move and full send a Wild Charge. Wild Charge, gonna grab the final shield. I now swap into Quillfish, where of course, yes, Poison Sting is resisted, but I'm also gonna resist all their charge moves. They go for a Trailblaze, they boost up the attack stat. Doesn't really make a difference there, as they only get off one Bullet Punch. We go for the Aqua Tail, we get the KO, and now they come in with Galarian Corsola. Now, unfortunately, from this range, they probably can go for a full farm down. We can reach a Dark Pulse here. Dark Pulse does decent damage, and I can also reach a last-second Aqua Tail. However, they will be able to fully farm me down. They're only going to get up to one charge move, so might as well get an edge advantage on the Cleavor. They fire off the Power Gem. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Azumarill, and Electrode is still very much healthy enough to reach a Wild Charge. However, we've got Trailblaze. We might as well just stay in with the Cleavor. The opponent gonna fire off the charge move here, but this game is certainly over. Ice Beam grabs the final shield. The opponent recognizing there's nothing they can do, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle, and actually a very good lead matchup and just generally a good Pokemon for the whole team here. The opponent got a safe swap into Primeape, and they expect a Swift bait there, so we one-shot them with the Wild Charge. Very surprising. The opponent now going to come in with a Shadow Toxicroak, and this time I will just bait with a Swift. Swift actually going to grab a shield from the opponent. Now we can come in with that Shadow Quillfish. With the regular Quillfish here, and we are going to shield the Dynamic Punch. Going to go straight for Aqua Tail. I do wait one turn just to make sure they don't catch back onto Drifblim, but at this point all shields are now down. I can actually just let this move go through here. Dynamic Punch is going to get the one shot, but Cleavor is the way to win this game here. Obviously I've only got double resisted Fury Cutter damage, but even then it's still chunking. The opponent swaps back into Drifblim, but that's going to allow me to farm up to back-to-back Rock Slides, and the first Rock Slide here, super effective, it gets the KO, and the opponent once again just going to concede the match. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. I'm going to see Electrode into Toadscrawl. So this is a really awkward matchup for me. Honestly, Electrode's not that bad into most Mud Slappers, as we do take neutral damage, and we can farm up to a potential energy pool and likely grab a shield. However, they only take neutral damage from the grass typing anyway, so Swift, very unlikely to grab a shield here, and it doesn't. But now I'm going to swap into my only real answer to this Pokemon. I'm hoping they don't bait with a rat, but they do. But they're going to come in with a Feraligatr. That's fine with me. We've got an energy advantage. Trailblaze is going to grab the first shield back from the opponent, and the opponent plays to a CMP tie that they do not win. Shout out to Homeside Ceremony for that quote. And the opponent not going to invest both shields there. We get the KO with the Trailblaze. They're now going to come in with a Dunsparce, and this is still a really tricky situation to be in. Here, I'm going to play it quite risky as well. Going to go for a Dark Pulse on the CMP tie. However, I believe they have thrown 7 rollouts, so they had to throw here anyways, as they are back-to-back. But the opponent makes my life a lot easier as they don't bother throwing. Instead, swapping back into the Toadscrawl, we can fire off the Aqua Tail, and the opponent's still over-farming, allowing me to reach yet another Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail going to grab the final shield here, and at this point, I'm actually going to swap out Catch the Charge Reef onto my Cleaver. I believe I do have a Charge Reef on my Electrode anyways, so this game should be over, but we're going to come back in with the Quillfish, forcing them to throw, or they're just going to take another Aqua Tail to the face. At this point, they recognize they can't do anything there. They need 2 charge moves, which they don't have, and so we do get the farm down. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. Going to see Unnovan Stunfisk in the lead. Again, another tricky Pokemon for me to deal with, just because I don't actually have access to Energy Ball here. I did consider it, but I was already on Swift, and I literally have 0 charge DMs after trying to get Psyshock on the Galarian Slowbro, in the Galarian Slowking in the video a few days ago, so unfortunately had to settle for Swift. But either way, they are going to chip with a Mud Bomb, then swap into Fearow, and unfortunately that Mud Bomb puts me into range where they can go for a full peck farm down, and I don't even reach a second charge move. So that's certainly not ideal for me. I'm going to come back in with my Electrode here, and I tried to throw the Swift. I just missed it there. That was it. It's not like the game didn't register it. I just literally missed the button somehow, and unfortunately, I then throw on CMP. So at this point, I'm expecting, I don't know, maybe like a Togekiss or something in the back here. So maybe we do still have play if I can look to overfarm massively with my Quillfish. The opponent swaps back into Stunfisk, but we have a huge energy advantage here. So gonna fire off the Aqua Tail, and we can throw another one on the CMP tie here. So Aqua Tail gets the KO there, and it is a second peck user, but it's not Togekiss. It's going to be Shadow Murkrow, and unfortunately for me, they're just dealing way too much damage with the fast moves. I can reach back-to-back Aqua Tails here. Second one will get them fairly low, but it doesn't really matter. I'm still in range where they can peck, farm me down with the Fearow, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. I can see Azumarill in the lead. So a great lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to safe swap into Credilli, and I was way too slow to swap out there. Unfortunately, of course, they are going to debuff my attack stat with a Rock Tomb, but now that we're debuffed, I don't think Rock Slide will get the KO. So knowing that it wouldn't KO, I probably should have just gone for Trailblaze here to boost up my attack stats, because now I'm going to double shield here, and I will be double debuffed before I get a full Fury Cutter farm down. So that is definitely a misplay on my end. Also, you could argue maybe I should have just come in with the Quillfish, because I do resist the fast move damage there, but also I would, you know, take neutral damage from the rock teams. But anyways, their final Pokemon is going to be Pangoro. So I go for Trailblaze. I'm now going to swap into Quillfish, as I do believe I can tank a close combat from full health here. It's going to be close, but we do tank it. No pun intended there with the close combat, but we go for an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail grabs the final shield, and now I'm actually in a pretty comfortable situation. As long as I have a charge move for the Azumarill when it comes back in, which I do, I can now full send a Wild Charge. I believe I also have a Swift loaded, so just in case the opponent already has another close combat, we swap out, we clear the debuff, we can tank a close combat so the opponent doesn't throw straight away, but Swift gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I'm going to see Altaria in the lead. So, this is an okay-ish matchup for me. Of course, they're going to have access to Flamethrower, or at least very likely to. And even Sky Attack is going to do decent damage here. So, I'm going to chip with a Wild Charge and then swap into my Quillfish. The opponent coming in with their own Quillfish. However, they have a Shadow regular Johto version here. They're going to fire for an Aqua Tail. By the way, I believe this is a team that Home/Henry showcased. However, I hadn't seen the video at the time, so I didn't know what the team was at this point in time here. So I'm just going to no shield. I'm actually quite surprised they tank a Dark Pulse there. That is very impressive. But anyways, we're going to come in, get the Fury Cutter farm down, and the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Feraligatr. So we certainly still have play here. I'm going to go for a Trailblaze just before they reach the Hydro Cannon. I tried to swap out, make a catch, but it's actually the opponent that makes a very nice catch. They're catching a Swift back onto Altaria. That is huge for them because, of course, Wild Charge would get the KO, and it would mean that their energy is useless. But now, unfortunately, I cannot get the full farm down here. I definitely should be committing to it, but no, instead, I'm going to no-shield this. I believe the Feraligatr does have an Ice Beam already loaded, so I had to no-shield there. But now, of course, they're very, very close to back-to-back Hydro Cannons. There's not much I can do here. I'm going to shield just because the Fury Cutter damage does need to add up. However, I'm definitely not going to be able to Thunder Shock farm them down. So, unfortunately, they get the Shadow Claw farm down, and I do end up losing that game. But GG to opponent there. I think me trying to make the catch and then having it caught instead by the opponent is definitely what lost me the game there. But into the next battle, you're going to see Gastrodon in the lead. So this is a matchup where, of course, we don't have the best options with our charge moves, but the opponent doesn't know that I don't have Energy Ball. So at this point, I'm going to no-shield here. They can't really go for a Water Pulse, so they fire off the Body Slam, and now I'm going to fire off another Swift. This would be amazing if I can grab both shields here, and I actually do. So now I'm going to swap out into my Cleavor. Cleavor does have access to Trailblaze for coverage. Gonna shield here as they do full send the Water Pulse, and the opponent will allow me to reach a Trailblaze. So of course, Trailblaze, double super effective, easily gets the KO, it boosts up my attack stat, but unfortunately they do just barely outpace me to a Chilling Water before I reach the Rock Side. So at this point, I'm gonna farm up to back-to-back Rock Sides pretty much. I didn't realize I had a Swift already loaded here, so of course, could have swapped out slightly sooner than that and reached a Wild Charge, but either way, we're still in an okay position. I'm gonna come in with the Quillfish. Poison Stings are super effective. Of course, they will go for another Chilling Water here. Going to debuff my attack stat, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Talonflame. So this game is certainly over. We go for the Aqua Tail. Doesn't do too much damage there, but I'm going to bank a ton of energy. Not that I need it. Swap back into Cleavor, fire off the Rock Side. One more Fury Cutter, and we get to a second Rock Side. And of course, Rock Slide takes out the Florges, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there, into the next battle. You can see Shadow Scizor in the lead once again. So once again, this is a fine matchup for me. I'm going to stay in initially here, and I do not need to shield the first charge move. Even if they boost with a Night Slash, I will still reach 2 charge moves here, but the opponent actually swaps out and into a Dunsparce. So here, going to fire off the Wild Charge. Wild Charge is going to deal decent damage there, and then swap into Quillfish. However, I'm not sure if I've put them into range where I can fire off just an Aqua Tail. I'd probably have to full send a Dark Pulse, so that's what I'm going to do. So of course, Dark Pulse coming through, it is going to grab a shield back from the opponent, but that's fine with me. At this point, I'm also going to shield here. If I went for Aqua Tail, I'd probably outpace them to 2 more charge moves. However, unfortunately, since I did full send a Dark Pulse there, if the opponent wants to double shield, they can maintain alignment. So at this point, Drill Run is going to get the KO, but we can come back in with the Electrode. We do still have some energy, so let's see what the opponent wants to do here. They swap back into their Shadow Scizor. Could have overfarmed slightly more than I did, but either way, Wild Charge gets the KO there. And let's see, what is their final Pokemon? The opponent is waiting at the switch clock. They're going to come in with Altaria, so I swap out immediately. And unfortunately, they do just barely outpace me to that first charge move. Sky Attack does huge damage, but we can tank it, and we can reach a Rock Slide. Rock Slide also does big damage in return. Does that put them into farm down range? I wasn't quite sure, so I play it safe here. I'm 2 away from the next Swift. I know one more rollout will not get the KO, so I can outpace this Dunsparce to a charge move before they farm me down, and of course, Swift gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there, into the next battle. We're going to see Empoleon in the lead, so a great lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to say swap into Malamar, and honestly, I'm way too slow here. I should just swap straight away into Cleavor. We've got double super effective Fury Cutter damage, but now because I stay in and I chip with a, well, I tried to chip with a Wild Charge there, they can actually reach 2 moves before I fully farm them down. So I have to double shield this, which isn't ideal considering, of course, we already know it's Empoleon in the lead. Empoleon has a great matchup into Cleavor, but I fire off the Trailblaze. Trailblaze will allow me to boost up my attack stat, and Trailblaze number 2 should get the KO. So I will force the final shield, and I do exactly that. I'm now going to swap back into Electrode here as I don't want them to fully farm me down. Drill Peck does decent damage there, but I can outpace to a Swift. Swift gets the KO up against Empoleon. Their final Pokemon is going to be Altaria, and here I make a huge mistake. I should have thrown Wild Charge straight away. All I'm doing by over-farming here is allowing the opponent to get more Dragon Breaths through and farm me down. If I threw earlier, maybe we give off like 1 or 2 less Dragon Breaths, and you are going to see that is going to be vital here. I thought I'd outpace them, but they actually outpaced by a single turn. I did still have a catch opportunity, so I should have just played it safe there, tried to make that catch, but either way, GG's to the opponent there. Very well played. But into the next battle, we're going to see Electrode in the lead up against Umbreon. So, interesting to see here. I have seen a slight resurgence of Umbreon recently. I don't know if it's just because I'm in... what the hell? I don't know if it's just because I'm in a fairly low elo range and Umbreon is kind of... It's a decent Pokemon, but its coverage is a bit underwhelming. But either way, they're going to swap into Drapion. So double dark so far. Wouldn't be surprised if they have a pure poison type Pokemon in the back. But I guess we're about to find out. Nope, never mind. They come back in with the Umbreon here. So of course, Snarls, they are resisted. They're really not doing that much damage here. I'm going to fire off the Aqua Tail, and then I actually kind of want to preserve my Quillfish. So I think eventually I will swap back into the Electrode. And even if they do have a poison type, we can still deal decent damage unless it's something like a Clodzer. So swap into Electrode, but no, they've got a Shadow Nidoqueen on Poison Jab as well, so definitely not ideal for me here. We fire off the Swift. We can reach back to back. Swift just not really going to do that much damage in this matchup, unfortunately. So the opponent gonna no shield the next one. At least we did grab a shield there, and of course I am gonna resist the Farsu damage since they are on Poison Jab on my Cleavor. So yeah, I'm gonna shield. They did farm up to a potential Earth Power. The opponent full sends the Earth Power there, which is huge for me. The opponent is now gonna outpace me, but this is just a Poison Fang, so I can safely no shield this. I'm now going to go straight for Trailblaze here. Trailblaze, of course, going to boost up my attack stat. It's going to mean these Fury Cutters are going to chunk into the Umbreon. Although actually, it doesn't look like it's adding up that much. But either way, they're going to full send a Dark Pulse, which means I can reach a second Trailblaze, winning CMP here. And of course, this should allow Quillfish to outpace them to a final charge move. So Dark Pulse gets the KO there. We come back in with the Quillfish. And of course, Aqua Tail gonna KO from this range. And Aqua Tail takes out the Umbreon. And I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent into the next battle. I believe the final battle of this video, leading into Unova and Stunfisk. So, not ideal for me, but the opponent actually makes it a lot easier for me as they safe swap into a Hypno. They could have just stayed in there, of course, maybe expecting me to have a Grass-type charge move, ineligible, but either way, it's still a pretty comfortable matchup for the Stunfisk, as I am hitting for triple-resisted Farsu damage with the Thunder Shocks. But anyways, we're going to see Hypno here. They do shield the first Dark Pulse. I'm now going to look to overfarm here. Going to throw a Dark Pulse just before they reach their next Elemental Punch, and Dark Pulse is actually not enough damage to get the KO there, and I'm actually going to swap out instead of using my final shield. The opponent is going to swap into a Ferrothorn. So honestly, this isn't that bad for me. Wild Charge is still going to chunk in this matchup. Of course, Power Whip is resisted damage here, and actually everything they can throw is also resisted aside from Acid Spray, which is quite unlikely to be had. But either way, we get them fairly low. We put them into range, but I can probably just farm down with my Cleavor in actual fact. So I'm going to do exactly that. So we come in with the Cleavor here, and we are going to, well, I tried to catch a move there. I don't know why, I just didn't time it very well. But either way, we shield up the Power Whip. They swap back into Unova and Stunfisk. And of course, now we can start boosting our attack stat. Trailblaze gonna do big damage. Of course, now the Fury Cutter is doing more damage. I can tank a Mud Bomb here fairly comfortably. They won't be able to farm me down here before I reach the next Trailblaze. And then, of course, Quillfish does have an Aqua Tail already loaded. So, gonna come in with the Quillfish. Gonna go straight for it. Sniping with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail gets the KO there, and I should be able to Poison Sting, farm down the remainder of the opponent's team, and I'm able to take that final game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.